Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jenna Nilo. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach for Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. Wanted to thank our friends from IETL today. We have got both Brian and Don today who are going to be taking us through what teachers absolutely have to know about cybersecurity. So you got questions, they got answers today. So in a minute, I'm going to turn things over to them. But before I do, just a few housekeeping things. First and foremost, if you're looking for your PDH for joining us today, I will be posting that in the chat at the end of today's session. So you'll be able to click on that link and go ahead and fill out the form that does the paperwork to make sure that you get your PDH for the session. So look for that in the chat. Speaking of that chat, we are going to ask that you do keep your self muted throughout today's session. Also, if you could just keep your video off, then that means that Don and Brian will have the spotlight today, and kind of just let them take the stage. But we do welcome interaction throughout the session. So please use that chat to put any questions in, to put any comments. If you have answers to other people's questions, just please feel free to go ahead and interact in that chat. If you don't know where that is, I'm sure everybody does by now, but it is at the bottom of your screen, and you will see a little chat bubble that you can pull up, and then that will bring up your chat. But please do utilize that. Both Don and Brian will be monitoring that throughout the session, but I will also keep an eye on it and make sure that everybody's questions do get answered. So I think that's all of my to-dos right now. I will pop in every once in a while with the Cubs and the Sox scores. I'm totally kidding. I'm not going to do that. But without further ado, I am going to stop sharing myself. I am going to turn things over to, I think Don's going to start for us today. So I'm going to turn things over to him. He's going to start sharing and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks. I'll pop back on at the end.
Hi, everyone. Don Ringelstein here. I'm the president of the Illinois Educational Technology Leaders, and that's the wrong slide. Let me get back to where I need to be. Brian Tobin is joining us too. Brian and I both served on a committee that helped essentially write the questions for the certification exam for educational technology leaders, actually worldwide. So this is it's typically been a United States thing, but we are starting to administer that test to folks in Australia and some other countries. So got a little bit of expertise on the line here. I won't say a ton, but we do know some stuff. So what we want to talk to you about today is what you have to know about cybersecurity, and this isn't just for your school districts, and it's not just about your students' data, which is incredibly important, obviously, but this is also a guide for protecting yourselves. So at home, the cyber crime is everywhere, and really what we're trying to do is help you start to detect that both in the school setting, but also in your setting at home. So we start to talk about this in terms of social engineering. And if you want to translate social engineering, it's a con game. It's what con artists do. They're social engineers. We call it social engineering now that it's done over the internet, but it's the same old thing. It's getting people to do things that they shouldn't do. 70% of the malware that's out there is installed through phishing attacks. So let's talk a little bit about that, and we'll start our presentation here.
I will download suspicious software.
I will download suspicious attachments.
I will download suspicious apps. If there were a button that said download malware, I'd click it.
Oh, I'll download malware.
Like the plague. I'll download the plague.
And email it to everyone.
I will visit suspicious websites.
Gambling.
Pornography.
BitTorrents.
FreeStreamingMovies.com. FreeLicenseCodes.com.
FreeNuclearCodes.com.
I just ended up on a watch list.gov.
ExpensiveLawsuit.com/we're all going to prison.
I will help that Nigerian prince transfer some money.
He's a prince for crying in the night.
He needs some help.
And in return, he's going to help me out.
We're going to be friends.
We might even get married.
I love meeting new people.
If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is true.
I don't even know where Nigeria is. I think yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so the point of that is please don't be those people. Those are the tech leaders in your organization's worst nightmare. And I know we're not those people. But what we want to, again, what we're going to talk about today is malware. We used to call them viruses, but now we have a general term. We just call them malware. So malware, again, can be installed in a number of different ways. There's a number of different ways to get them. Have you ever found a USB drive laying around and plugged into your computer just to see, if it was a student's or something like that? If one of your colleagues lost their USB drive, putting a USB drive in your computer like that could be installing malware. So you need to treat USB drives that you are unfamiliar with as dangerous. So that's one way to get it. Two, and as we said, phishing emails. Phishing emails are a very, very common way to get malware. And really, all it really takes is following a link, going to a website, clicking on an Excel document or something like that. Anything that's got a macro in it that could install malware is potentially dangerous, and that is flooding us on a daily basis. I mean, we all see just tons of phishing email every day. And also, one thing that we need to think about too is the Internet of Things. Now, this is usually an interactive part where I'll ask people, how many of you have things at your house that are connected to the Internet? How many of us have things that are connected to the Internet at home? I usually joke around at this point because I'm one of the few people that have a coffee maker attached to the Internet. I can turn my coffee maker on from anywhere in the world, which is, of course, vitally important. But if you're a tech geek like me, well, that's the kind of thing you do. These are actually becoming the number one things that get infected. I've got a refrigerator now that's connected to the Internet. Your TV is probably connected to the Internet. These are the number one infected things. And part of the reason for that is that usually when people deploy them or when people put them out there, they don't change the default passwords. So if there's a password for a device like that, usually that default password doesn't get changed. Of course, everybody knows these default passwords, and then it's very easy to essentially install malware on that thing once you know, because it's essentially just a little computer. And once you know that password, you can get into it and install malware. And that includes cameras, that includes all kinds of things that we use in school too. So all of our cameras, all things like that are potential virus targets or potential malware targets. So connected to that, bots are a form of malware. So bots are essentially in and of themselves usually not that harmful. A bot sitting on a computer doesn't really do much, and it's short for robot, of course. But when you team bots together, when you get thousands of internet connected devices with bots on them, they become what we call a botnet or a botnet army. And there are people that have control over the people that put these bots out there have control over these botnet armies, and they can use them to do things like do distributed denial of service attacks. I know my district back when I was at West Aurora suffered from a month worth of attacks on and off. They weren't happening all the time, but we would get attacks on our firewall, essentially the connection that everything in the district had to go through to get to the Internet. Our firewall was getting attacked periodically over the course of a month by, at one time, it was 250 gigabits worth of traffic at once. That's enough to flood just about any internet connection. The first time it happened, it actually took down a significant chunk of the city of Aurora. It was that bad. And it turns out that, this wasn't some nefarious you know, a Russian advanced persistent threat, you know, like Fancy Bear or something like that. It was a kid sitting in our high school who was bored in one of his computer labs, and I think at the time it was $25 a month. He could call down an attack like this on demand. And it's very easy for any student at our schools or anybody in our networks to find out what the right address is to attack. All you have to do is Google what's my IP address, and you get the correct address to attack. You give that to, at that point, it was a service called webstressor.co, and they can take down any website or any firewall like that. It was actually webstressor.co was running out of Europe, and Interpol took them down, and the incidence of those denial of service attacks went down by about 40% nation or worldwide once WebStressor went down. So anyway, that's what bots do. Bots, essentially little pieces of software distributed on thousands of devices that can then gang up and do some pretty nasty things. Spyware. Spyware is exactly what it sounds like. So, you know, if you're looking at your computer now, if your camera's not turned on, the little light next to it's not on, doesn't mean your camera's not on. Your camera might be on. It was funny. How many, I'm sure a lot of us have those little camera covers on our computers that we can cover up our cameras with. I used to think that was funny, you know, that people would do that, because, you know, who's got time to take over your camera? And, you know, certainly nobody in the IT department at school, but, you know, who's got time for that kind of thing? Until my network administrator at the time showed me how easy it was to take over my camera without me knowing it. And ever since then, I put on a camera cover. How many of us have gotten the email saying that, you know, whoever sends the email has gained control of the camera on our computer and can see what we've been doing? That email, that kind of phishing scheme was running rampant probably about a year and a half ago. And it's, again, depending on the threat of spyware to really make that a serious threat. But there's another piece of spyware that we're not thinking about just with cameras. It's also keystroke logging tools. So hackers can install keystroke logging tools that will track everything that you type on your keyboard. So think about it. If you're going to your bank's website, that keylogger will say that, you know what, you went to www.chase.com. So they know that you've gone to your bank's website. They know that you put in your username, and they can grab your password just like that with a keylogger. So that's another form of spyware. It's essentially watching what you're doing on your computer. In the same way, when you're at work, if you're going to your student information system and logging into that, if you've got a piece of spyware installed that's logging your keystrokes, you can lose your username and your password to your student information system. And once somebody's got that, they've got access to all the student data that you have, which can be a scary thing. Trojan horses are essentially when you install a program, when you think you're installing, like, say, for example, Adobe Reader. We all need Adobe Reader. If we're running PCs or Macs, we all need Adobe Reader. So you go to some website and you download Adobe Reader and you install it. If it's not Adobe that you're getting it from, chances are that you're installing something you didn't want to install along with Adobe Reader. So you double click to install Adobe Reader. You could also be installing a keylogger. You could be installing a piece of spyware. You could be installing a bot. The point is that you think that you're installing one piece of software when in fact you might be installing something else. So the cure for that really is to make sure that when you get software like that, make sure you get it from the source. Go to adobe.com for Adobe Reader. You don't get it from, you know, some random site, you know, that you pick when you Google to get it. Ransomware. So Jason was going to be joining us. Jason from Rockford was going to join us on this call. and he's got a very personal story to talk about with ransomware. There was an attack of ransomware earlier this month. The Flagstaff, United School District, Unified School District, was down for 2 days due to a ransomware attack. Jason works in Rockford. They were down for the better part of 3 weeks due to a ransomware attack. And what a ransomware attack does is essentially locks the data on it encrypts, and that's just a fancy way to say it. Really, it encodes all the data that's sitting on your systems, and that can be the computer that you're on right now, but it could also be the servers at school. It can be, whatever computing device that it gets on, it encodes the data on there such that you can't read it anymore. It's essentially, for all intents and purposes, it's gone once it's been locked using ransomware. Now, what ransomware provider, what the people who are sending this out will tell you, okay, you pay me $50,000 and I'll unlock it for you. So there's kind of a mixed opinion on what to do about this. I guess, say for example, you've got your dissertation on your computer and you get some ransomware and it locks your computer and you don't have a backup. What do you do? I mean, if they're asking you for $500 to unlock your data, what do you do? There's some that suggest that you pay the money. I'm of the school of thought that, these are obviously criminals that have done this already, that have locked your data. What's the likelihood that, if you give them another $500, they're going to unlock it? I mean, what's their incentive? We know they're criminals already. There's really, they're asking us to trust them that they'll unlock the data. A. So B, in a school district, so if you host, if you got your student information system is running on a server at your school or in your school district, your finance system is running on a server in your school at your school district. If ransomware gets in there, it can lock that. And if it locks it, that data is gone. Now, we have legal requirements about keeping that data. Well, and think about it too. If your finance system at school gets locked, you don't get paid, because that's where all the employee records live. That's how you get paid by the school district. If that gets locked and your IT department doesn't have good backups that are safe, not only good, but they're safe, they're not infected with it too, then you're dead in the water. And that's essentially what happened at Rockford. Their phone systems were down. They had to replace every hard drive and every computer in the district to recover from that. So disaster, clearly. So ransomware is nasty, the long and short of it. So again, how do you get malware? So essentially, we talked about a USB drive. You find a USB drive laying around, you plug it into your computer, you could be installing malware. If you get a phishing email and you click on that attachment that executes a macro that then calls out to the internet, downloads something else and installs malware, something like that, if you've got administrative rights on that device, you're going to get infected. And if you connect that device to a network, there's a good likelihood that everything else on that network is also going to get infected. So this is it's once your computer gets infected, it's very easy to pass it. And one of the things that we look for when we are monitoring systems throughout the district is we look for what we call escalation of privileges attacks. So even if, like, say, for example, you've got a student who is sitting in a lab, or sitting on their device, clicks on a piece of like an infected email, the first thing that a virus is going to do if it gets on there is going to try to elevate its privilege. It's going to try to change itself into an admin and then use those privileges to start spreading that virus elsewhere. And then if it can get on a server and then elevate those privileges and become, like me or Brian, become like one of the people that can control everything, then there's problems. So Things you have to watch out for, again, phishing emails. Don't plug in USB drives that you're not familiar with. Treat them like they're dangerous. Don't plug them in. So again, social engineering, we talked about this at the outset, but it's a technique employed by cyber criminals designed to lure unsuspecting users into sending their confidential data, infecting their computers with malware, or opening links to infected sites. That's what social engineering is. It's surprisingly easy to do. One of the things that people that are social engineering that are doing these attacks prey on is our inherent drive, especially as educators and as people that are supporting educators. One of the things that they're preying on is our willingness and our desire to help others. And they use that to our disadvantage. And I've got a video, I think it's on the next slide, that kind of illustrates that.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year. They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yeah.
So that's phishing, which is the voice version of phishing. There's also smishing, which is the SMS version of phishing as well. So there's a number of different ways that hackers, but look how easy that was. So she was able to gain access to that guy's account and essentially lock him out of it using a recording of a crying baby. So here's some phishing emails. So, and actually I'm going to tell you right now, this is an example of one that I sent out to some of the staff members back when we used a program called Know Before, which allows us to test the staff for, they're clicking on phishing emails. No, there's no bad intent involved. It's not about a gotcha. It's about really helping everybody learn how to detect phishing emails. So there's a couple of things that you look for. For example, if you look at the from, it's promotions at sbuckscoffee.com. That's not Starbucks domain name. And that's not them. This link here is to sbucks.co. That's not Starbucks internet domain name. So that, so this one's actually pretty easy. Just look at that and how many a day do we get from Netflix saying that there's a problem with our account and that, you're going to have to go here and put in your account information. And, if you look at who actually sent the email, it's got nothing to do with Netflix. So the first thing you really do when you get an email that you're not sure about, look at who it's actually from. Don't look at the name. Because this could just say, hey, it could be promotions at Starbucks. But if you look at the actual email address, that's when you see that, hey, this isn't right. But otherwise, this email looks pretty good, right? This is Starbucks. This looks exactly like something they'd send out. If you weren't looking at that email address and being careful about this link, you wouldn't catch that. And you'd go there and get whatever malware installed. Spearfishing, sometimes also called whaling, is when they're going after specific targets. Now, usually what we call advanced persistent threats are the ones that do this, and they really study the organization. So for example, when I was at West Aurora, they knew enough about our organization. They had done enough research to know the email address and the name of our payroll person. And of course, they knew the email address and the name of our superintendent. So they made it look like the superintendent was emailing the payroll person asking for everybody in the district's W-2 forms on a PDF to share with the board. So the good news is that my payroll person came over and said, hey, this doesn't look right. What do you think? And I said, let's go ask Dr. Craig, the superintendent. Dr. Craig said, sure enough, I didn't send that email. So you've got to be, in the words of my old, the network engineer from from West Aurora, Jose Arellano, you have to be what he called politely paranoid about this stuff. So again, emails, vishing, smishing, be politely paranoid. So why do cyber criminals do it? Obviously, it's for money. Actually, if research is showing that the #1 malfeasor behind ransomware attacks is now the mafia. So they're not strong arming, grocery stores in the neighborhoods anymore. They're using ransomware to go after bigger targets. It's an easy way to make money. So how do we stop it? Technology solutions are essential. So, again, between us and the wide world, we put firewalls, we have antivirus software and things like that. The thing with antivirus software is the software has to know the pattern or the ID of the virus before it will work. If you're getting a new virus, a virus that hasn't been seen before, antivirus software is not going to help you. The only person that can help you is yourself. So, as I said, in this corner, we can spend millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars on cybersecurity solutions, firewalls, encryption, anything like heuristics that'll detect email patterns, things like that. But as long as we click on phishing emails, it doesn't do any good. So and what I always told, and I'd tell students back at my old district, and I haven't had a chance to talk to students at my new district yet, but the most sophisticated tools that we have to protect ourselves from malware are ourselves. It's not a piece of machinery. It's not a firewall. It's not any computer. It's us. We're the product of 4.5 billion years of evolution or divine creation, whatever you believe. But there is nothing on this planet that's more sophisticated than us in detecting these sorts of scams. So in short, cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. It's not the IT department's job solely. It's not anybody in the district's job solely. We all have to team up on it together. And just a simple piece of advice, again, you are the most powerful system we have to stop cybercrime. Don't be a happy clicker. My mother is a happy clicker, and I spend a lot of time helping my mom. Just put it that way. So tools to do the job again. Your district has tools that they use, but again, you are the most powerful tool. And just in case we freaked out, the first time I ever did a session like this, we walked out of there and people were literally had turned white. They were just freaked out. I mean, we walked out of there, you know, people's eyes were wide. It was, you know, obviously we had scared everybody to the point where they weren't going to use computers anymore. And we don't want to do that because we do things every day that are dangerous. We just have gotten used to the risk and we know the risk. And that's why we can do this too. We just have to be aware and we have to educate ourselves on the risk. So we do dangerous things every day, right? So I've got some funny videos here and I'm just going to skip them. But thank you for your time on this part of our presentation. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat here.
There is not yet.
Oh, okay. Brian, do you want to take over the second part? Do you want to share your screen and take over the second part?
Well, I'll leave that to you to get set up, but I'll just talk for a few minutes to get, you know. So, you know, Don laid a great foundation of all the things. Unfortunately, I'm not the B, C, or D. I think I'm the E team. There were, as Don mentioned, there were a couple other people that were supposed to be here. Somebody had a fiber cut today. Somebody had another emergency come up, and somebody else had surgery over the weekend. So, you know, they brought in the E team. You know, as you look at, you know, the title of this is what teachers absolutely have to know. Right now, whether it's your personal accounts, you know, that your banking and things like that, your personal email, as you saw in the video for the one, you had the gentleman's cell phone, how easily it was for them doing a phishing attack to gain access. That is constantly going on. And so then you add to that, with school, the amount of information you have about your students, the personally identifiable information. 20 years ago, when I first started, we used to collect social security numbers of every student, and those were maintained in our student information system. And at my old district, it might still be in the historical files of that old information system. That's very valuable to have a young adult or a young child have their social security number and, you know, 15 years later or whatever, make it so, you know, be able to start using that. That is something that is very valuable to, I don't want to say the hackers, but to the people like Don was talking about that want to start impersonating people and have that information to be able to utilize to, you know, apply for lines of credit, apply for somebody else's credit card, get cell phones. So school districts contain a crazy amount of data about their students, good and bad, and we also send a ridiculous amount up to the state of Illinois, and so they have that access. So on us, you know, we say, why do you as a teacher care? Well, what happens to you right now if you were to lose your cell phone or lose access to your personal account, personal cell phone, your personal devices, that has all your credentials saved for your banking? How many people out there save all of your passwords in, let's say, Google or Safari because you're using the password save feature? Now somebody gets full access to your phone and they have access to all of those password accounts, unless you're using something like a 1Pass to protect yourselves even further. Don mentions his mom was a mad clicker. Yeah, I got my parents off of PCs a long time ago, and they have, you know, either an iPhone or an Android tablet, and then a Chromebook. They're not allowed to have anything else anymore because it's just too hard to support and keep up with. I don't know, I clicked on 30 things and everything's broken, and I don't know what happened to my banking account and why my lights are going off. So yeah, Internet of Things, the way, the structure of that is going. I shared a link in the group chat, and it was just came out of, it was 4 days ago. One of the vendors with a smart coffee maker, because Don was talking about a smart coffee maker, was hacked. And what do you do when your coffee maker now says pay a ransom or else throw this thing out? Well, you're going to throw it out. But that's how vulnerable we've allowed ourselves to become. And I'm guessing most of your districts do have some sort of an open network that lets students come in and utilize. And hopefully your districts have somebody like my network engineer that have gone through and micromanaged everything and don't allow that traffic to interact. And some of the things that we do, we don't lock down workstations because we enjoy an extra ticket or enjoy visiting to install software. You know, in our district, we do utilize, they're all Windows devices, and we push out apps through a management console and generally don't have to go hand touch a workstation to install software. But it took a lot of work to get there, and the reason for that is we're really just trying to protect the end user from themselves. I think Don said the humans were the most evolved, or the greatest asset. I'm sorry, I view humans as the largest vulnerability. We are the weak link, myself included. It's so easy to mistake a document that's shared to email. Some of them are really easy to spot. Others you have to pull back and take a look at. And we do encourage our staff here at Central to reach out to us. And if they have a question, it's not that big of a deal. We'll do a quick investigation, figure out if it's valid, help them through a situation. I would rather have a teacher reach out because they suspect something, even if it's on their personal system, their personal phone, personal email address. I'll be more than happy to do what I can to help figure that out, than run the risk of them falling for a phishing attack or scheme that then, creates more vulnerabilities along the line that would impact our district, or, God forbid, our payroll system, or any sort of, large data breach of student data, or all the personnel files that we have, or that are tied into the HR system that, those get exposed. That's creating a lot of problems for a lot of people. And let's face it, you guys have enough as teachers, enough work to focus on just getting the kids through the current time. And we try to give you the tools to make that as easy and fluid as possible. But if you have suspicions of phishing and viruses and things like that, reach out to your tech directors or whatever your support system is within the district. Don't necessarily go to another teacher. Go right to your IT folks. I mean, we're here to help, and we're going to do everything we can to try and make sure your school day goes on and you're not impacted by some of these things.
Thanks, Brian. And speaking of, Brian did mention that, even with your personal computers, we had a member district that had a finance person working from home during the height of the pandemic, accessing their payroll or their finance system using a personal computer, and infected the finance system through their personal computer. So it's the nexus for the number of links that it's like contact tracing for COVID, really. It's hard to tell everything that your computer touches. So we're going to take a look at Jason's slide deck here. Again, Jason wasn't able to be with us today. So 1,027 K12 cyber incidents. So that's unauthorized disclosure, ransomware attacks, phishing. I'd say there's at least one phishing attack per day per school district, at least in this country. It's mind-boggling, and the reason is it's very cheap for them to do this. Denial of service attacks. I've been the victim of that, and the last one that we had at West Aurora was a junior high student that was able to pull off a denial of service attack. If they're playing, Xbox or with PS2s, they know these things. They call them booters that boot their competitors or their whoever they're playing against off the network. Same thing can be used to take down a school. So it's fairly rough.
To add to that, Don, video game swatting. How many people have heard of that? Very similar. Instead of a denial of service attack, they would actually call in a police report. So you think about the social engineering that goes on with that. They're calling in saying something's happening at a house that's across the country because they've been able to trace the IP of the end user, know their location, and actually have, there were incidents where a SWAT team was knocking down doors over kids playing Call of Duty or whatever video game it was. I don't know how often or how easy that is to still, I think that police departments have, picked up on that over the years, but that's just the exact same sort of thing, but that's just through social engineering that they're able to do that.
And again, to Brian's point earlier too, and the reason why that we are get targeted in K12 is, again, we have very valuable student information. If you can take the student's information, say from a kindergartner, and be able to take that data and establish credit with it, it's going to be a good 13 years probably prior to anybody knowing that student's information has been lost or has been taken. And by the time the student goes to apply for, say, their first credit card or for a student loan or for a car loan or something like that, and find out that they've got badly damaged credit because somebody's been using their information for 13 years. We are being targeted, again, we are. I mean, it's just the bare fact of the matter. So Fairfax, this is the one that I was talking about a little bit earlier this month. The district that was attacked by ransomware. I'm not sure what Jason's got here, but one of the big rising trends in phishing and vishing and smishing now is COVID related. So anything related to COVID, like for example, I got a voicemail yesterday, and I was COVID positive actually, and I got a voicemail yesterday from the Kendall County Health Department, saying, hey, give me a call and let's talk to it. And it was legitimate, but think about it. I mean, it could have been somebody saying, okay, give me a call, and then getting enough data from me to essentially take my identity and get some HIPAA or health information from me as well. So this is real stuff, folks. So what I think I'd like to do now is open it up for some question and answer. I know we've got probably 15 minutes left. I think it's a good time for some Q&A.
There was one question in the group chat. How many network attacks come from within the community versus outside the community? I know we see attempts, on our firewall from outside our area. It's just obscene. 20,000 plus vulnerability attempts that they're trying to get in any way they can. As Don mentioned, I think it was his district, that was started by a student inside the district using an outside resource. And a few other districts in our area have had similar issues where students are initiating the attack from within. At this point now, they're using their cell phone, looking up basic information. They've already paid their credit card, whatever, and it bounces and it just starts a flood attack at a district on specific IP. So it is a good mix. I mean, there are the constant vulnerability scanners that are going on the outside that are always pounding away at our networks. But a lot of the denial of service and things like that, short of it being a social justice denial of service, or somebody coming after you because they just don't like you, or now I think a lot of times it's students initiating attack because they don't want to take PARC, MAP, any of the standardized tests that go on for 2-3 days at a time. And I know a couple of districts in our area just got bombarded with that for over a couple of years. So a lot of times it happens internally and it goes on from there. Tron, I teach a course in cybersecurity. Do you know any good sites that have some good activities for students, like hacksplain.com?
So Tron, I'd also suggest really the golden source for information on cybersecurity is the National Institute for Standards. They are really, for example, I'm studying right now for the highest credential in cybersecurity, and most of the foundations for that body of knowledge is based in the NIST publications. So NIST is a good source. I'm not sure about student-facing. Brian, are you familiar with
specific sites for the students?
Yeah.
No, we had this discussion actually 2 weeks ago at our ROE, because our one of the consortium districts in our area told one of the other schools, "Oh, just open your network up completely for our kids to go and get to whatever they want on the web, out on the internet." And we talked with the director there, and it's like, well, what does their curriculum look like? You know, and some of the things that came back, the National Guard or Army ROTC program, one of the other districts had a cybersecurity course and curriculum that was being taught in one of the districts. And so we helped that director get in touch with that person to then hopefully work with their person that was teaching it in their consortium school to try and get through some of those things and get better resources. Because yeah, it's hard, because honestly, if you're on my network or our school network, man, I can't even look at lottery numbers. You know, my network engineer has it locked down. You try anything with the title hack in it or anything like that, and it's gone. We can't even get to it. So I do actually feel your pain, and I don't have any great resources beyond, there were some hackathons and things like that that have been set up that were less the engineering, but because of the title hackathon, it was causing problems. But I don't have any specific websites.
Project Lead the Way has some cybersecurity resources now too.
That was the other one.
They have a capstone course in Project Lead the Way. And I knew I should have said something about Zoom bombing earlier. You know, we've had some issues with that, and we've had issues too. We had actually a fairly bad Zoom bombing issue in my district earlier this year. Making sure that require kids to authenticate, that's pretty important. So if you're using Zoom, that's an important thing to do. There are a number of different platforms. You know, I see Abigail would rather use Teams, and Teams is a good platform too. Google Meets is actually, Google now has an enterprise version that really increases the utility, I'd say, of Google Meets. It automatically takes attendance. It has a lot of security features that Google Meets didn't have or still doesn't have in the regular version. You can do Q&A, you can do all sorts of things that I think Google Meets is going to be a better platform than Zoom here by the time they get breakout rooms done in October. But that's my 2 cents.
Sure. As far as Zoom, you know, someone brought in about from the cybersecurity standpoint of view. Initially, it was awful. I was dead set against it in our district. Part of it because we were already Google Enterprise customer. We had the tools in place to do what we needed to do in the spring. It was a tough battle because we had teachers standing and screaming because everybody and their mom were using Zoom, the free version of Zoom, and it was successful. There's no doubt about it. The stuff that they did to make the video and things like that work, they just left so many openings for the bad actors. At this point, I honestly think they've addressed all of them. And certainly in a district that's using it from the enterprise level and has the licensing, I think it's really good. I think they've done a really good job now. Zoom bombing, yeah, that's the same difference. We've had a few incidents even in Google Meets. Our thing right now, students can, from within the Meet, invite people. For the most part, that's not happening, but we've had a couple incidents with that. But we've also got it set so if someone tries to enter that isn't invited, the teacher has to approve that. Mm-hmm. And our teachers get freaked out when they see it and they report it, but they nicely don't let them in. So at least they're doing that. And, you know, again, the more we can do to make it easier for you teachers the better. We're not always, we're honestly, we just want things to work.
Right.
We're not, we don't put these blockades in there to make your life harder, even though some do. But it is trying to keep things safe for you and the students.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're here for you. We're here for you and the students, and we wouldn't have technology in the districts if you didn't need it and our students didn't need it. So it's really our job to help provide that. And just to revisit the inside versus outside question again. So a cyber attack really starts by what we call a port scan, where you can use automated tools to really just see what ports, we call them, are open to the internet, and what the protocols they're allowing. And so if hackers then find an interesting port that they can exploit, then they start diving in a little bit deeper. And those port scans are automated. And as Brian said, you know, you're getting 20,000 of those hits a day, every day. So they're constantly, not just on big networks like schools, but on your personal device at home too. They're looking for open ports there too. So that's just, you know, again, it's a way to make money, and that's what they do. What other questions do we have? Is anybody using like phishing simulation stuff in your district? Like KnowBe4 or tools like that? Yeah, I see Abigail has.
We've used, in our district, we use Sophos for the last 3 years with their phishing tools. We're actually moving away from that. As I was telling Don earlier, we've upgraded our Microsoft licensing and the security tools there, and there's some phishing utilities that are available to us in there that we're going to start using. But it's also hard. Like, you know, I think Don, during COVID, might have still been testing your staff. We backed off.
Yeah.
You know, we typically do it, you know, we would do an attack, if you will, or a phishing about once a month, whether it was staff or student aimed. But since COVID hit, we completely backed off, and we would just send some notification emails and get some information out about, because again, we're not trying to cause panic or any extra work for the staff right now.
Yeah, it's not, and just be aware, if your district chooses to do it or starts to do anything like that, be aware it's not about a gotcha. It's not about trying to trip people up and make them, you know, look dumb or anything like that. You know, I'd always have people say, "Oh, I clicked on it, I'm sorry," and I'd say, you know what? Don't be sorry, as long as you learn something. That's what's important here. That's what we're trying to do, is educate. And really, that's just another teaching tool. It's one that we use to help teach cybersecurity.
And depending on who the insurance agent is for the district or company, it may start to be required.
Yeah.
There's a major consortium that a lot of us use, and they're starting to really hammer home that they want this done. So, and
Illinois has also passed some pretty strict laws around student data privacy that are going to go into effect, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about that. That'll go into effect in next June. That'll sort of increase our responsibility around making sure that we safeguard student data. So it's a good question from Abigail from a security perspective, how to decide what kind of software. So part of it is what I do is review it in terms of, I look at data privacy and I look at things like that just to make sure that, I mean, there's some standard software that everybody in education uses, you know, that we're pretty familiar with, and that the data privacy and how they handle data is pretty clear. There's some others that are sort of niche sort of applications that you really have to take a look at, really drill down into those data privacy agreements, and then also potentially ask them to sign. We have essentially a rider that we have set up for contracts with anybody that consumes our data, you know, outlining their responsibilities around how they handle our student data. But for the most part, the general stuff that we run, like in the environment, it's all, you know, just the standard kind of stuff. We don't install a whole lot of stuff that's sketchy, we'll put it that way.
And I see Jenna's on, so.
Yep.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. That was some fantastic information. If anybody still has questions, I invite you to continue to use that chat, and we might be able to hang out just another minute or two, but just to be mindful of everybody else's time, I did want to go ahead and I just put in the chat window right now that link for your PDH. So that first link there, that bit.ly, will take you to our Google form for you to fill out showing your attendance today. ISB does require live attendance at our webinars. So go ahead, fill that out, and you will get the proof of attendance. The word's escaping me right now, but you will get that emailed back to you. I also included 2 other webinars. I failed to mention at the beginning of today's session, we did record this. So this will go on our Wednesday webinar page of our website. The link is right there. It's where we put all of our webinar recordings. So you can always go back and find great information if you happen to miss one of our webinars. But I will also be emailing you the recording tomorrow, as well as any resources that Don and Brian want to share, perhaps the slide decks. If you guys don't mind emailing me those, I will go ahead and include those. And if there's anything else that needs to be shared as well, I know we had that link in the chat for the K12 cybersecurity map. Speaking of the chat will also be linked within tomorrow's email so that you have all of the resources that were shared in the chat today as well. I'm going to do a quick share screen here. And this is just letting you know about some of our upcoming webinars. So next week we have one with the Morton Arboretum on nature in virtual and remote learning. So some new resources that they have for both field trips and then just using their resources within your science curriculum using the NGSS standard and the Common Core standards. We also have some upcoming workshops. Our next one is October 15th, the Amazing Race of Learning. You can find information on registering for any of these events in that last link that I put there, the ideaillinois.org calendar link. And then finally, if you haven't noticed it or seen it yet, we have opened up registration for IdeaCon. But more timely, I guess, is our presenter proposals. If you do want to be a presenter at IdeaCon 2021, so next February, proposals are due October 19th. So definitely go to our website and check that out. There's a link in the sliding images at the top of our homepage. Otherwise, go to the IdeaCon page and it's there as well. And we would love to see your presentation proposal. So please get those in by October 19th. Other than that, I still do see some stuff going on in the chat. I think a lot of good thank yous. We've got Don's email address in there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Don, Brian, IETL, thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate this. Glad that we could offer these kinds of programming for all of our members, and we appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So we'll hang out for another second. Otherwise, have a good one. And I'm sorry, Brian, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just going to tell you, somebody's reaching out. They can't get the time to submit on the sheet for CPDU.
I can't get the time.
Don and myself, so we'll want to make sure they get their CPDUs. I totally understand.
Yeah.
My wife's a teacher.
That's a good question, Melissa. Do me a favor. Go ahead, and if something is not working in that, email me pdh@IdeaIllinois. I'm putting it in the chat right now. Email your.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Even better. Yeah. Otherwise, it was in there. But great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and we will we'll go from there. So I will email that out, Don, Brian, if you don't mind emailing me any of the resources that you want included in tomorrow's email, and I will make sure that those are included. So
sure.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
All
Thanks so much. Everybody have a good evening. And I think both the Cubs and the Sox lost. I know the Cubs did for sure. Sox was in the bottom of the 8th last I looked. So, bummer.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one, guys.